Hello and welcome back to our series Coffee with the C-Suite. This is our first episode for the year. My name is Mina Imsirovic and I'm joined by Will Ainsley, our COO. Will, thank you for joining me for a coffee.
Thank you for inviting me.
In your case, another caffeinated beverage because you're not a coffee drinker.
I'm not. I'm a constant disappointment to anyone in Melbourne not drinking coffee.
That's okay. You know, apparently it's the new trending thing not to drink coffee anymore, so you're ahead of the curve. You're doing well. Now, to begin every episode, I like to ask my guests for their recommendation of the week. Now, this can be absolutely anything from anything you've watched, used, seen. So what would it be yours for this week?
Yeah, mine's probably a different answer to what you normally get. My top tip to everyone is to put sun cream on your top of your feet when you go to the water park. Because otherwise...
Only the water park?
Well, you know, in my case, specifically the water park.
Okay.
Because when you go back to work and you have to wear shoes, it's pretty uncomfortable when they're burnt to a crisp.
That is very good advice. Thank you. I experience, well, not feet, but top of head has been my lesson to learn. Every summer, I should really wear more hats. But I don't. So I wanted to start off this year's series with something very topical. Now, it's ChatGPT. Some people I find that people sit in two camps over it. So you have the people who go, oh my God, it's the rise of the machines, and they know everything about it. They've played around with it, and they have various opinions on it. And then there's the other camp of people who go, what? I have no idea, have not heard about it. So I think we should start with, what is ChatGPT? Now, we're not experts, but I think we can give a bit of background.
Yeah, not experts, but I've had a reasonable play with it sort of just before Christmas, and like I say, everyone was talking about it. So ChatGPT, it's the latest in a line of AI conversational engine. So it's a chatbot that you can ask questions. It's scoured the internet, it's scraped all the information, it's been trained on a big model. You've got to ask it a question. It spits out some content, mostly related to what you've asked.
Yes, and it does really seem like it has popped up overnight.
Yeah.
I know, AI, there have been different tools and lots of people have been playing around with different tools, but this seems to be like a kind of groundbreaking, world-shaking new thing, which is why I guess so many people are talking about it.
Yeah, I think this is version 3.5 from OpenAI on the GPT model. So I think the difference with this one is previous models have been used in the background with chatbots and other companies, but this one is the first that's giving you, I guess, that user interface and that come and try it for free.
Yeah, until we monetize it.
Well, yes, exactly, and I think they've already started.
Yeah,
and I think that will change a lot over time.
Yeah, exactly. And it has. I've read things from it being deemed the death of Google, but we won't get too dramatic today. Instead, I want to talk about it in the recruitment context and how it can be used in recruitment. Yeah.
Okay. So, I guess a good example. Myself, before Christmas, we were rewriting a lot of our PDs, and I thought I'd try, as I was trying out various things on the model. I thought I'd get it to write some of our PDs, and I think it did a pretty good job, in all honesty. Asking for, let's take my role as an example, let me write your role description for COO in a small SaaS business, and it gives you a good template, and I think that is a really good use of this model, idea of that starting point. So I think that's a really good example. I think I'd like to see it as if you're going that this is a great thing, or what's it great for, that starting point, augmenting and helping you be more efficient as a recruiter. Yeah. I think particularly in anything where you're writing content, so that might be role descriptions in my case, it might be job adverts. I did also see that you can do some fairly cool stuff with the prompts around job adverts. So you can say, I want to make sure it's gender neutral, or I want to actually, boost my diversity by being gender specific. So it gives us some really good capability. Anywhere where you're producing content, I think it gives you a good starting point. Right. Now, would I ask it to write me a job description or a job advert and leave it? Probably not. I think, yes, that would help your efficiency, but it's going to be quite generic, and I think that is going to lack your EVP, and it's going to mean that everyone is sort of using the same kind of templates, and you've got to stand out from the crowd. So I think if you see it as augmenting, that is a much better approach than replacing some of your key roles. We're also going to see it in other areas where things like automation and scheduling. I think that will come over time, and I'm sure lots of companies, as Testgrid are looking at that and how they harness that kind of chatbot power.
Yeah, I've heard that it can integrate with other chatbots for automation too. So perhaps if you do have a chatbot on your site, it can integrate with that, and it can screen resumes. So it can, it seems like it could potentially even do cooler things, but I completely agree with it's not really there to do 100% of the work just yet.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that'll be what we'll see over the next, even 6 months. In all reality, is that people will start to harness it in quite powerful ways. I think I've also seen it in interview questions, those kind of things. I actually tried an experiment where I put a couple of sample resumes through it to try and pick out the best candidate. And whilst I'm not saying that is a fair, equitable use of the software, I was really trying for capability to see what it could do, and it could definitely pick out things that were keywords in my job description and match them to resumes. So I think there's certainly I think this will be talked about for the next few months as people try new cool things. It gets better, because don't forget it's learning all the time. Everything you plug into it,
and the more people use it, the more of course. And what about on the candidate side?
The candidate side is really interesting. So I think that's potentially where the biggest risks are for organisations. So if I'm a candidate, what can I do? Well, I can definitely help you write my cover letter, my resume, any communication to an organisation to apply. And I think I've got a personal hatred of the resume. I think the research is quite clear that it's not predictive of someone being any good. But yet we all still rely on it, or certainly often it's hiring managers that rely on it because it's habit. And I think this gives an opportunity to update some of those processes and update our reliance on a tool that is not predictive. Because essentially what's going to happen is that you're going to put a job advert, people are going to scrape it and go, write me a resume for this. You're going to see the same resume.
A lot of great cover letters that, just all a bit too similar as well. Because can you imagine, like, if a role has, thousands of applicants and even 20% of them are using ChatGPT for a cover letter, they might start to look the same.
Yeah, you're going to get very bored very quickly. And I always think that, it's almost into Terminator 2 territory, but you've got, an AI written resume being passed by AI in an ATS. I mean, that's an interesting conversation in itself, maybe just let the chatbots talk to each other. But I think it's just going to show that it's even less predictive. And it's no longer a useful data point for recruiters to identify whether someone has that professional experience to write a good resume, that they've got the right command of the English language, or whatever language you're writing in. Those kind of things are just, you don't know who's going to have written it.
Yeah, exactly. So the potential concern, I guess, lies around it being used as an assistant to candidates, but this isn't necessarily the end of the world. And we've talked about it for a little while, both publicly and internally, that the death of the resume is here. We've talked about it being dead. The resume and the cover letter, to an extent, we don't really think it is the way to go, like you just mentioned. So if resumes are a thing of the past, what can recruiters do to ensure that they're screening candidates efficiently?
Yeah, I think any good recruitment process has multiple data points throughout the process. And I think, let's say resume is now of less importance, cover letter is of less importance. Well, where can I put some importance? And that might be, I'm obviously going to say this, but assessments, things like video interviewing, where that's pre-recorded.
Because ChatGPT can't sit assessments, well, particularly behavioural assessments, right?
Absolutely, and we've tried it because naturally we would. So your behavioural assessments are really interesting. You try and ask the engine whether it's what it prefers, is what's like me, what's not like me. It will say, I can't do a behavioural assessment. I don't know what you prefer. So
I don't know you.
exactly, yeah, because you're unless it's trained on you from the internet, and that becomes a whole big discussion further down the line, I think. So those kind of things are really good. You've obviously got the ability, your cognitive ability, skills testing. You might still want to test a written component, for example, but you can no longer get from a resume or a cover letter. Well, okay, we can do written assessments to ask someone to summarise passages, those kind of things. And they can all be done within a secure testing environment, and even proctoring. So proctoring is really interesting. It's a way of either a live person or actually AI again, watching a test taker do the tests and making sure that they're not cheating, getting any outside help, or even being able to open additional browsers and those kind of things, and actually have ChatGPT answering questions for them. So look, there's always going to be solutions to the problems, and I think again they will accelerate over time as we see more and more of what candidate behaviour actually is. But definitely the message is don't panic. Yeah. Come and talk to an expert, be that Testgrid or whoever else. There are plenty of ways around this that you can get the rich data that's important.
Yeah. All right, so I think it's safe to say the key takeaway, particularly for recruiters and for talent acquisition professionals, is be aware, know that this could already be in play, people could be using it, but don't panic because it's not the be-all and end-all, and there are other methods. There are even ways to cross-check. We talked about video interviews being a really great tool to, if somebody comes across a certain way and is using certain language within their cover letter, and then you get them on a video interview and it's completely different, it's quite an obvious sign. So
yeah, absolutely, and I think harness the power of it to help you as a recruiter be more effective. And I'm sure there's plenty of discussions at C-level, maybe raising the expectations of people's efficiencies and what they can do, and that might be across recruiters, marketers, coders, all those kind of roles. But yeah, like you say, I think it's just understand the risk, manage that risk as you do with anything else, and maybe it's time to be creative with your process and think a bigger picture.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's a watch this space kind of thing with ChatGPT. I'm sure this won't be our only episode on it. God knows what we'll be talking about by the end of this year. But thank you so much for joining me today, Will, and I'll see you next time.
Pleasure. Thanks, everyone.